Hi, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Embersunn. Oh, that's not like my actual name. Well, that's my gamer tag. And today I wanted to go ahead and kind of, I guess, push or like inspire future programmers to go ahead and start like diving into programming. And so what we're going to do today is do an introduction to variables and data types. And we're just going to kind of skim the waters with this because honestly, this isn't even half of this isn't even like 1% of programming. It's crazy how much you could do. We are going to play a little bit around with variables and strings and stuff. And I am recording, so I feel like I'm probably going to end up editing this video and then posting it on YouTube just for fun. I haven't posted on YouTube for like the longest time. All right, so for those of you who want to learn Python programming, the first thing we need to do is actually download Python to your computer. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to python.org, and I'll have it right here for you. Then you guys could see it. You want to go to python.org, and you want to go ahead to the download section. And you want to download the latest Python release. So the latest one right now is Python 3.9.1, and that's the one I'm going to be working with. And if you don't have Mac OS, if you have like Windows or etc., you can go ahead to view the full list of downloads, which I clicked here. And you can download this version for Windows, Linux, and other platforms. So go ahead and do that first. And there's different versions here. You don't specifically need 3.9. For example, if your operating system is not allowing you to download Python 3.9, you can download Python 3.8, and that one will be good enough. They work the same, they just fixed a few bugs on the latest one. If you want to check if you have Python 3, you want to go to your terminal. So go to whatever search panel you have, to your search panel, sorry. And here you want to type in Python 3. We're using Python 3. So if you don't have Python 3, definitely go get that downloaded. I just showed it in the back. But we're using Python 3.9.1. I initially started with Python 3.8, 3.8.5, and it's the same thing. It's just that they fixed a lot of bugs here. So recently I downloaded Python 3.9.1, and that version is just a lot smoother, I think. There's a lot less problems. So, kind of a little bit about myself before we actually start. I started programming like around, I think 2 years now, like 2 years ago. And like since then, I started diving in a lot into programming. I think I did like 100 days of code, and I was kind of floppy with that. I would kind of miss a few days, and then I'd have to like start all over again. But that was a lot of fun for me, and I learned so much programming through that. Programming in general is a huge field. There's a lot of different languages, and there's a lot of concepts and types of like data that you have to learn. And so what I'm going to be teaching today is not even you're not even diving into programming. You're really just lightly tapping your toes in like a beach because it's a huge amount. But if you want to start learning how to program, you definitely have to go in and start somewhere. So this is what we're going to be programming. We're going to be creating a program that is going to ask for user input, and it's going to ask the user to put in their first and last name, and I'll show it right here. We're going to ask the user to put in their first and last name. And what the program is going to run is it's going to print back, it's going to display whatever they put in. So for example, if I were to so we'll put Daniel Rudd, right? And the computer is going to put in your input, which is just Daniel Rudd, exactly how you spelled it. We're going to put it in a title font, which is Daniel Rudd, which capitalizes the first letter of the first word and the second letter of the second word. And then uppercase is going to capitalize all of it. And lowercase font is going to lowercase everything. And then we're going to display an outro that's going to say, thank you for using my Stringtastic program. And that is going to be the first ever program that we're going to be creating for all of you guys who are doing for the first time ever programming for the first time. Like if you guys don't know how to program, this is the place to be, honestly, because we're going to start completely from scratch. You don't need any experience to do this. You guys are going to just kind of follow whatever I do, and I'll be explaining step by step what I did, how I did, what the concepts are, what is the data type that we're using, what kind of variables are we using, and etc. So wherever you have your search bar, this is much easier. I always do this, but you want to go ahead and type in idle in your search engine in whatever software that you're using, and you want to go ahead and click the latest version. So I have two versions here, 3.8 and 3.9. So we're going to use 3.9. So before I do that, let me just delete this real quick. And you're going to go ahead and enter that, and it's going to prompt a new idle shell. And in here, we can actually start programming everything in Python. This is only specifically Python. You can't use any other language here. Once you're here, we're going to go ahead and make a new file. So here is our new file, and here's where we're actually going to start using the program. So the next thing you want to do once you're already done doing this is create a folder. This is so that we can actually store our file in there. So create a desktop folder, however system you're like, whatever system you're working with, just create a new folder in it. I'm going to do one right now in front of you guys. I know you guys will be able to see it here. Hopefully you guys can see it. Yeah. And you're going to go ahead and rename this file my first code. And try not to use spaces, just so you can start practicing using underscores. So we're going to write my first code. And we're going to save our file here. So now that we have our folder created, we can actually start coding. So let's go ahead and let's begin. So the first thing we're going to do is actually do something very cliche. We're going to print out hello world. And to do this, I just want you guys to simply kind of follow along with what I'm doing. And then what I'm going to do is kind of explain what I just did. We're basically telling the computer here that we want the computer to display the string name, the string value, hello world. And we're going to very quickly run it. Now, the first thing we have to do is it's going to prompt us to actually save the file, which is what we have to do right now. So now we're going to get the chance to save our file. It's just taking a little bit. And we're going to save this file as, let's see, what can we save this as? My first code. So what I'm going to do is capitalize just the first letters of each one. Okay, .py, and py stands for .py. So you know, it's important that when you're using a py file to end your file with .py. And go ahead and save it in your my first code file. So this one right here. Okay, so we have it saved. Now it's going to run here and it's going to appear here. So we just printed out hello world. There it is. This is very cliche, but if you're following along, you just printed out your first line of code. And in whatever language of programming that you're using, you typically, to start it off, they'll make you print out hello world. Or they'll say like hello JavaScript world, or hello Java world, or hello C++ world. Or in the majority of cases, when you're taking Python courses, they'll tell you to print out hello Python world. And that's how you start. So we're just going to write hello world. What we're going to do is we're going to actually start writing our program. So let's go ahead and let's begin. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a variable. The variable is going to be called message. So let's go ahead and let's write message. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to completely write down the code right now. All right, so here we have a message, and within the message it says, welcome to my first program. Now when we're showing somebody a program, we want to make sure that we're user-friendly. So we want to give them a nice introduction. So this is going to be our introduction, and we're going to move it a little bit down here. And I'm going to kind of explain what this exactly is, because it's important. So this right here, this message is called a variable, and every variable is connected to a value, and which you'll see here. So every variable, like this variable right here, is going to be connected to a value. Our value here is a string value. Now, when our Python interpreter reads this first line, it associates the variable with the text. Now we're going to create a second line because we can go ahead and type as many variables as we want, as many strings as we want, but the computer is not going to display it unless you tell it to. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Kind of like what we did with Hello World, we're going to ask the computer to print it out for us. So we're going to print out message. Now, when the interpreter reads this second message, we're giving it a command to go ahead and print or display whatever is within this variable. In this case, it's welcome to my first program. So let's go ahead and very quickly run this. So let's run the module. And of course, every time you run it, you have to make sure you're saving it. And now when you're looking at it here, which I'll move it a little bit just in case it's not that visible, you're going to see it displayed here. Welcome to my first program. Now, what the computer did is it followed our command. It interpreted the first line by reading out, okay, well, we assigned that this value is going to be for this variable, and now the coder wants us to go ahead and display the variable. So here it is, welcome to my first program. Let's go ahead and continue to the next line of code. But before I do, I actually do want to mention that these variables and values are very interchangeable. The variable can be whatever. If you want to display a message, you don't have to name the variable message. It could literally be anything. For example, you can name it a note. And all you would have to do is change this bottom part here to tell the computer that you want a note to be printed out. And it's the exact same thing. And the Python interpreter will go ahead and update and keep track of whatever you change. Now, before we start, you do want to be clean with your code. And to be clean with your code, you actually have to start using comments. So what I usually do when I start a program, when I went into my first programming class, is I organized my files to make them nice and neat and keep track of everything. So I would put in, my name here, and I would put in the date. In this case, our date is, I kind of forgot what our date is. Oh, that's, 2021. Okay. And what I would usually do is I would write a description of what my code is going to be about. So this is a description of our program. This program will ask for user input and convert it to different font styles. Now, they're not named fonts, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So what we did here was we displayed a variable and value. So, there you go. Displayed a variable and value. Welcome to my first program. And this also plays as our introduction. So we'll leave it here. Okay, so just like that, you can actually assign, like I told you, it doesn't have to be a no. You can actually assign a name. And let's say that I want to put in my first name. Well, we're actually going to put in my gamer tag because I don't want to actually use my first name. And now I want to print out that variable name, right? Kind of like how we did in the first one. But what I want to do is give it a different kind of font. So then when it prints out, it doesn't appear like this, but rather I want the first letter of the first name and the second letter of the first letter of the second name to be capitalized. And how are we going to do that? Okay, well, we give it a title method. So once you do this and you actually run this, I'm going to show you what happens. So now what it does is it takes your variable and it capitalizes the first word and the first letter of the second word. So now you have Embersunn, but you have it in title font. Title method, and it is an action that Python can perform on a piece of data. And in this case, our data piece is right here. Now, this method is followed by a set of parentheses, so you can actually add additional information into the work, which is typically what programmers who actually use this in their job that will add information into the work. But we don't have to because we just wanted to simply manipulate this data piece right here. Now this dot right here actually tells Python to make our method act on the variable name. So this right here tells it we want this method to work on this variable. Now what we're doing here is I'm going to just quickly separate this and add a comment here so then I know exactly what I did. And I encourage you guys to also do the same if you're following along. We're going to go ahead and say, well, this right here is going to display the name using title. title method, which is exactly what we did here. Now, let's say that we actually want to use a different kind of method for this data right here. So there's different kinds of methods. For example, if we want to make this variable string be all uppercase, what we can do is tell the program the same thing. So we want to print out the name, but we want everything to be in uppercase. So the same type of formatting that we have here, except we're not writing uppercase, we're writing upper. And we're going to leave it here. And then we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing for the following line. So we're going to do name and we're going to go ahead and do lowercase. Now it's the same thing here. All three of these are methods. And what they're doing is they're manipulating the variable and the data that's within the variable. So now let's go ahead and print it out. And I'm going to show you what exactly this does. We're going to ahead and save it. And now you have welcome to my first program. You have Embersunn with the two first letters capitalized. And you have Embersunn with everything capitalized. And Embersunn with everything lowercase. And this is exactly what we told the computer to do. So we have everything here. So now we can actually change this. And we're just going to go ahead and very quickly put title, upper, and lower font, just to kind of get an idea of what we just did there. Now, how is this here useful? Like what can we actually use this for? Well, these methods are particularly useful for storing data. For example, when you're working with usernames on a website, right? You don't want to depend on the capitalization of the user, right? Because the users can go very crazy with their username. So what you want to do is you want to convert the user's name to, well, typically they do it with lowercase, everything lowercase beforehand before you actually start using the lowercase. Hi. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to ask the user to go ahead and put in their very name. Well, we're going to prompt them to put in their first and last name. So the first thing we have to do is we actually have to go all the way up here. And much like we declared and initialized this right here, this variable we assigned, okay, well, this variable is going to have welcome to my first program screen. What we're going to do is we're going to tell the program that the name is going to be whatever the user inputs. So all the way up here, we're going to just put declare and, let's see, initialize variables. There you go. And what we're going to put is name again, and we're just going to put 2 quotation marks. And we're not going to put anything in it. What this is later, this variable, we're basically initializing it so that we can use it. And whatever the user puts is going to be saved within name. Now this name is different from this one, because this name is capitalized. And I did this on purpose because these two variables are not the same. They're completely different variables. One of them is capitalized, one of them is lowercase. And whenever we want to use this specific variable, we have to capitalize the N. So now let's go ahead and let's ask for a user input. And we're going to do it right below intro. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to leave a comment here, ask for user input. And we're going to go ahead and call out that variable name. And we're going to tell the computer, okay, well, the data that we're going to assign for this variable name depends on whatever the user inputs. Now, you have to know the difference between input and output, just in case you guys don't know it. Input is whatever the person puts within whatever data the person puts within the computer, while output is whatever the computer is giving out to the user or to the person who's using it. And so what we're going to put is input because we want the person to put it in. And we're going to put what is your first and last name? Yeah, we'll leave it there. So what is your first and last name? Now I forgot to put in quotation marks, so let me do that. What is your first and last name? I'm going to use a colon just because it's neat and it organizes everything. So now we have what is your first and last name. It's a semicolon. There you go, colon. And I'm going to leave a little space here so then the user knows to put in their first and last name here. Now what we're going to do is once they put in that information, we're going to go ahead and we're going to print it out. Same method that we used here. We're going to print out name. And remember, you want to capitalize name. You want to capitalize the N right here. And we're going to go ahead and print it out. So let's go ahead and let's see what this specifically does. Oh, and just so that we have an idea here, I'm just going to go ahead and very quickly, so then there's like a little division there so we're not confused. Let's go ahead and let's run it and let's see what it gives us. All right. So now we have welcome to my first program, and this is prompting the user to write down their first and last name. See, it says, what is your first and last name? We're going to go ahead, we're going to use our first user here. And he's kind of hot, okay? I know this dude. We're going to use Daniel Rad. Now, what just happened? Okay, well, we told the program that whatever the user inputs, we want to print out their name. So here we have the variable, we have the command input, and we have our data, we have our string here. And now we print out whatever is in this variable right here. And it's exactly what it did. It says Daniel Red right here. Now, with this exact same concept, we're going to kind of put in together what we learned here with what we learned here. What we want the program to do is we want the program to put in the user's first and last name into 3 different fonts. We want it to use title font, upper font, and lowercase font. So instead of just like rewriting everything again, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and copy this real quick. And I'm going to print it out here. And what we're going to do is we're going to change this variable here. Because remember that lowercase name and uppercase name is not the same thing. They're 2 different variables. So we're going to see it right here. There you go. So now we just told the computer, okay, we want the computer to display, or in other words, print out the variable name. Here's our variable. Here's all the information for that variable. But we also want the computer to print out the name in title method, which is going to capitalize the first letter of the first name and the first letter of the last name. We also want the computer to print out the name in all uppercase, and we want the computer to print out everything in lowercase. So now let's see how the program runs. So now we're going to go ahead and run the program. Okay, so now it's asking for our first and last name again. So I'm going to go ahead and just put, again, Daniel Rad. And now let's see what the computer did here. And I'm going to raise this up just in case you guys can't see. We see that the computer printed out the name exactly how the user wrote it, or exactly in this case how I wrote it. And in the second line, it wrote everything in title font. So you have the first letter capitalized and the first letter of the last name capitalized. And then here you have everything uppercase, just as we told the computer to do, and everything here in lowercase. Now, something to understand with variables is, and basically the concept that I want you guys to leave with, is that you can assign anything to a variable. It doesn't have to be a string. And so you guys know, everything that's within quotation marks is considered a string. You can actually assign a variable a data number, an integer. It could literally be the number 22, and the computer will display it. So what I'm getting into is that with a variable, you assign it absolutely anything you want. It doesn't have to be a string. What we're working with today is specifically strings here, and how to manipulate strings. And a way to manipulate strings is by changing how they're written. We're going to go ahead and make this user-friendly. Basically, what we did here is we did basically complete our program. But we want to make sure that whoever is reading this doesn't see this and ask, okay, what is this? Like, this looks like a hot mess. We want to organize it. So what we're going to do right now is, since we already have our user input here, I'm going to go ahead and just delete all this right here because we don't need it. And now we're going to go ahead and use something that's called FString. Now what FString does is it actually allows us to put in a string and put in a variable within the string. And I'm going to show you exactly what that means. So I want to organize the program in a specific way. I don't want to just print out the name and for it to appear in title font, uppercase, lowercase. I want the user to know this is how it's printed out in title, or your name in title font. your name in uppercase font. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an FString. So we're going to go ahead and take this information. Let's go ahead and use the first one, for example. And we're going to put the letter F in the beginning. Now let's go ahead and put a quotation mark. And we're going to put in whatever we want to assign for the first name. So your name, right? So here it is. This is going to print out the name. And we're going to put our variable, which is this one, if you guys remember, in braces or brackets. I think it's pronounced braces. I keep forgetting how to pronounce that. But this right here. And now we're going to go ahead and end this by closing everything with a quotation mark, with a second quotation mark. We're going to do the exact same thing for these three too. All right, so now we have everything organized. And now let's see how this ends up once we run it. And hopefully I didn't make any mistakes because sometimes I miss either a colon or... Okay, so now the computer is prompting us once again for our first and last name. We're going to go ahead and use Daniel Rad again. But now we have it different. See, now we have your name, and it says the name of the user. We have title font, and it says the name of the user in title font style. We have uppercase, where we have the name all in uppercase, and lowercase, where everything is lowercase. But we tell our users what everything is. We don't just leave them to guess what it is. And see how this is much neater? You have to start practicing how to be user-friendly with your code since the very beginning, because once you start using these methods, you'll become used to being clean with your code. And it's important to do this as soon as you're starting out programming. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's decorate this just a little bit because I kind of don't like how it looks a little bit like a hot mess. We want everything to come out very nice and pretty. So let's go ahead and let's make an outro. And the outro is just going to be us telling them thank you for using our program. Okay, so much like we did with Hello World, we're going to go ahead and put print, and we're going to put in, and I'm just going to use a \n. What this does is it separates this line from this line of code. And we're going to put thank you for using my stringtastic program. There you go. All right, there it is. So there's our outro. And now I kind of want to decorate it. I kind of want to, I want underscores to kind of form a line between, it's kind of like sandwich our code. And I'm going to show you how to do that and how that looks. So again, using the string method, I'm just going to put in an underscore. Just like that. And I'll close it in. Now I want this underscore to appear 50 times because I want it to form a line so it looks decorative. How do I do that? Okay, well, I tell the program that I want this times 50. So we're going to use an asterisk right here, and we're going to write 50. We're going to close it all into this parentheses. Now what this does is it's going to form a line. And I want this to appear in the beginning of our program too. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to write that again. So I'm going to write print and then underscore. Oh, there. And then an asterisk times 50. Okay, so now we have that. Very quickly, let's go ahead and see how this looks. Okay, so here's the underscore. And what it did is the program multiplied the string times 50, which is what we asked it to do. Welcome to my first program. What is your first name and last name? And then we have thank you for using my stringtastic program. And we have our underscores here. They're written 50 times because we told the program to write the string times 50. And this is how it looks. Welcome to my first program. It's going to prompt the input of the user and then display whatever the user inputs in 3 different methods: title, upper, and lowercase. What we did right now is just a little bit of Python, and we did a little bit of variables and data types. That's kind of what I named it here. And what we did here is just very lightly tapped into like a huge ocean of water, because programming is a lot more than this. But what I really wanted to do was kind of show you guys how to start, where to start. Um, and you can kind of look into this more, like if you want to Google after this variables and data types, you can go ahead and look into that. But hopefully this was fun for you guys. I try um, explaining this in a very simplified way. I know that a lot of times when you look at YouTube videos, they kind of just write everything and then they kind of expect you to already know. And my goal was to kind of make this very simple for everyone. And hopefully I did. Um, but this is kind of like the end of our video right now. This was our program. Thank you guys so much for joining in. I'm going to go ahead and save this video for anyone who wants to look at it later. If you want to go ahead and do this later and you were just watching to kind of enjoy it, thank you for joining us. And no, I mean, that's basically it, guys. So thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you guys the next time I do this. So you guys know I actually do gameplays on Tuesday, and I do just like a little bit of programming teaching on Thursdays. If you guys want to tune in and kind of learn a little bit more of Python, which is what I'm currently teaching. So guys, have an amazing day. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna go ahead and end this stream. So bye guys.